listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome into the GM Shuffle. DraftKings and Crown. I am Geoff Schwartz, 8 years National Football League alongside Marty Hurney, 30 years in the NFL front offices of the Panthers, the Commanders, and the Chargers. And we have so much to get to today. We're going to talk NFL general manager tiers and rankings based on how Marty ranked them. I will disagree with some of these, as we should. We'll have a lively debate on these. That'll be later in the show. But first, we have some NFL news and notes to get to. As usual, I want to congratulate Marty Hurney. Last Monday, we recorded an episode, and about 3 hours later, the news of Brendan Sorsby being denied essentially to enter the NFL. The NFL declined to have a supplemental draft. It's something Marty called on this show a few hours before it happened. Maybe Marty was doing some insider trading. I don't know. But Marty, congratulations. You nailed that, man. You said no supplemental draft for Brendan Sorsby, and there'll be no supplemental draft for Brendan Sorsby.
Yeah, it really no specific information regarding his case, but it's just the subject, Geoff, is it's the most sensitive subject the NFL has to deal with, as far as, because there is legal gambling now, the perception of the game. And that is what has made the NFL so great. They have a great product, but we talked about it before. It's the marketing, it's the publicity, it's the trust that they have built between their fan base and their product. And there's one thing that can just destroy that entire trust, and that is if officials, players, some type of gambling starts to affect the outcome of the games. That would be the start of the NFL's demise. They know that, and that's why I was pretty confident it would be very hard for them to let Brendan Sorsby in after he has done what he has done on the gambling side. Now, what they've done is no supplemental draft. So the CFL has said that he can't play. So I guess it looks like right now he might go an entire year without playing and then go into the NFL draft next year, which obviously would do the exact opposite. It would have the exact opposite effect as if he would have gone in the supplemental draft this year, been the only quarterback, his stock would have been higher. So it's just too sensitive a subject, Geoff. They had to do what they did.
Last kind of question on this topic, then we'll close the loop. We talked about this topic obviously for weeks now, and now that he won't be in the NFL, there's not much to talk about. But Marty, if NFL teams had said to the NFL, to someone, hey man, we really like this kid. Like, we think he's going to be a first round supplemental player. We want him as our quarterback. Does the NFL hold the draft? Like, is there anything that, if the teams really wanted him in that supplemental draft, would they have held the draft for him?
No. And Geoff, I'll tell you what I was hearing, behind the scenes is that somebody was going to take him no later than the second round. So I think that they knew there was going to be interest in that he would be taken. I was surprised because I didn't think he would be taken if he went, but there are too many people I trust that thought that he would go, by the end of the second round. And that is something that the NFL definitely didn't want. And that would only happen because he's the only quarterback in the draft, and his value increases because of supply and demand. So, no, I think this issue is much bigger than winning and losing games, than what teams think of certain players. This is the most critical issue the NFL deals with on a daily basis.
All right, I lied. I have one more question when it comes to this topic. Does he need to show, contrition? Does he need to show the NFL that he's sorry, that he's working on himself? Because some of the discussion coming out of the decision to not hold someone draft was that he just sort of showed no remorse. Like, he never really publicly came out and had a press conference and whatnot. Does the NFL need that from him to even be drafted next year?
Yeah, they not only need that, Geoff, but John Fox always said, "Your actions are so loud I can't hear a word you say." Brendan Sorsby's got to go into he goes into rehab for a year or whatever. He's got protections, I think, at the NFL. Okay, he made a mistake, but he's apologized for it. He's taken these steps to correct, and that's what needs to be on Sorsby side.
All right, let's close the loop on that. We're done with Brendan Sorsby for a while. I feel like, Marty, that we've done this for months and months, and he's no longer going to be in the National Football League for at least a year. We'll talk about him maybe next April here. A very sad story today that broke this morning. Chris Johnson, former running back in the National Football League, 2,000-yard season, electric runner, right? I mean, just as fast as you can find at that position. Played, I think, drafted 2009, right around he was right around the same time I was in the NFL. We sort of had parallel careers. Yeah, 2008. So he came in the same year I came in. 2009 was his year. We had yards. He finished with nearly 10,000 yards in his career. He announced that he has ALS, and it seems very advanced. He's no longer able to speak and to really live a life in any meaningful way at the moment. And Marty, it's heartbreaking. First of all, it's really sad, and it really hits home when it's one of your peers. Like we've all seen the former players, right, that have struggled with ALS, but I didn't know them. I don't know Chris Johnson, but I played against him, played the same time as him. We're both drafted in the same class. I didn't realize we're the same year, and he's my age. I think he's 39, 40 years old. I turned 40 in 2 weeks, and it really hits home how fortunate that I feel having played and feel relatively healthy. And it's really sad. This is a disease that we know is possible playing the National Football League. I do think that when I was entering the NFL, ALS was known as something that could happen to NFL players, but I think it was largely ignored. I think players now know the risks of playing in the National Football League. That's a good thing. And hopefully, we have research that continues to help people with ALS and find a cure for this disease. It was very sad, Marty. It was very sad. I feel, I don't know, just heartbroken, man. It was sad to watch this morning.
Really was, and I remember going down to East Carolina and seeing him, Geoff, and gosh, he was so exciting to watch. I mean, he just jumped off the field, and he was, one of the fastest players in the NFL, and he got it. He had instant acceleration. He flew. People were saying, "Oh, he's only straight line. He won't go high." Well, guess what? That straight line speed was elite, and he had good vision, and he could make short area change of direction. He was an excellent running back. I love down there. And you just think about it, Geoff, you think about going down, and I remember seeing him in practice and just the vibrance and the energy, and it's just a really sad story, as you said.
Yeah, so let's hope he's able to get the treatment he needs. It seems to have progressed pretty fast, according to him. And discussion that was on the television this morning. So if you want to go find that, go. It's always Good Morning America this morning. If you go find that, and wish him all the best here. And very sad and heartbreaking. There's no easy transition, Marty, to anything else. But Niners wide receiver, at least for now, Brendan Aiyuk, he's not good enough, Marty, for all this. He did a video. I don't even know how to explain it, Marty. He seems to have fired his agent. He seems to have no one in his life giving him any solid advice. Is he just done with the NFL? The Commanders are not trading for him. There's just no chance they can trade for a player who seems as unhinged as Aiyuk right now. There's just not a chance. And so it feels like
Him coming off a major injury, right? I mean, coming off a significant injury, that it's just nobody's going to trade for him. It's just back in the day, Geoff. It's funny because back in the day when a player came out and was under contract and kept saying the name of one team, everybody would go, "Whoa, isn't that tampering? Isn't that tampering?" It's not tampering in this case, and there's too close a connection between John Lynch 49ers and Adam Peters at the Commanders. Obviously, if you have somebody that was with the 49ers like Adam was, and then he goes and takes the general manager's job, a player's always going to kind of target that team to say, oh, they're interested in me, and then he's using the connection with Jaden Daniels. But it does no good for him to be doing all this, and it just hurts his value and his interest. Listen, there's a lot of teams that are in the hunt that, like the Commanders, that could use a talented receiver, but you really do have to look at the whole picture and say, what's he going to do to our locker room coming in if he's doing this? I don't know how all this is going to play out. I think he eventually will probably end up with the Commanders, but nobody's going to trade for him at this point. I don't.
Was you think he will end up as a Commander at some point?
He's going to end up somewhere, Jeff, because there's too many teams that have a shot that could really use another. And I think that the familiarity there, and the Commander certainly could use another weapon like him.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance if I do. And, I think that I don't know anything, but I would assume that Adam Peters and John Lynch have had conversations on this because, again, I mean, Adam worked there too long. They're too close. Both organizations are class organizations and do things the right way. So, there has to be something for Brandon to be using the Commander's name the whole time. But, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure other teams would be interested as well if he was released.
I don't know, man. Aiyuk claimed that him and Lynch are not cool anymore. That his agent sabotaged him, like all these things that, get him in the building of Washington. Does he start talking about the Commanders like this if things go poorly? And that's, I think, what the worry
Or
is.
anybody that he goes to.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to
correct.
be the Commanders.
Correct. All right, coming up next, we'll get into our NFL general manager tiers. But first, Marty, the Commanders are plus 460 to win the NFC East on DraftKings. Oh boy, that number is heavy. I think that's a play that I might make at some point in the preseason, maybe during the season. I think Commanders are alive. They are a team that improved their defense. They are a team that has Jaden Daniels that should be healthy this year. They have weapons. They have an offensive line. Like, it's a good football team. Remember, they played the AFC Championship game just a few years ago. So plus 460 on DraftKings right now. Commanders to win the NFC East is worth a look. Let's talk general managers next. Give me a shuffle. About DraftKings Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
All right, Marty, we're back here on the GM Shuffle. This is summertime, so it's list season. And we don't love lists as much as tiers. So we're going to tier the NFL general managers. And you came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiers here. Before we get going here, it's worth mentioning this is a general manager list, but also you decided, and I think it's worth discussing here, sort of the impact that the head coach and general manager relationship would mean for these tiers. So talk us through that as well.
I think that's the entire key to success, organizational success, Jeff, is that, the general manager's role, everybody thinks that it's just, roster building or in being in charge of the draft, but it's so much more than that. And you have to have a general manager and a head coach who are on the same page philosophically. Everybody wants to get involved in decisions, right? Everybody's got an opinion, but there can only be one real decision maker on personnel, and really two voices. The head coach and the general manager have to get along. I was so fortunate. John Fox and I worked together, and John taught me a lot. I think we helped each other. I would hope we taught each other a lot. And I know John would agree that he taught me a lot. I'm not sure if he would agree that I taught him anything, but we had a great relationship, as did Ron Rivera and I, and we would spend so much time talking about how you wanted the team built, how you were going to win games, right? Because everybody thinks evaluations are more than skill sets. They're about fits. They're about what you're looking for talent-wise and how it fits into your scheme and what you're doing. And more importantly, it's about personality fits. You win with good people. At least that's the philosophy we had at the Panthers, and it worked for us. So I think that the partnership between those two, and it really is. It's a partnership as far as being on the same page enough to say, okay, I know these people. We've heard a lot of voices and a lot of disagreement, but Marty, this is what we have talked about. This is what we want, and John Fox and I and Ron Rivera and I were able to do a very good job of that, at staying on the same page down at Carolina. So I think that's so important. And when you look at the list, this list, you will see the strong combinations of general manager and head coach. And the first one that steps out is the Kansas City Chiefs, because you've got the general manager, the head coach, the quarterback. Now, ownership plays very heavily into this, because ownership works with the head coach and the general manager as far as that organizational philosophy. But the general manager and the head coach have to see things in the same light. Doesn't mean they agree. It's bad if they always agree. They have to disagree. I told this story 1,000 times that Joe Gibbs and Bobby Bethard would go in Bobby's office, and you could hear him screaming up and down the hall. They came out that door open. They were laughing, and they were on the same page. They had come to an agreement of what was best for the team and the organization. And I think that's the most critical part of the general manager's job. You're dealing with so many facets of the organization. You're dealing with the owner. You're kind of the mediator. You're in between the owner and the head coach. You're dealing with the scouts, the assistant coaches, everything, the business side. There is a lot of managerial stuff, but you have to make sure that everybody is going in the same direction. And I think that's the most challenging part of the job.
I think it has to be, because everyone has their own opinions, right, on how to do things, and you have to be able to figure out the common ground there. I've always felt that the teams I played for, the best was when there was a synergy between, here's the type of player I need to work for my system, and then the general manager finding that player, right? It wasn't the coach being the one in charge of that. It was finding the player that fit the system, and that's, I think, what the best general managers do. So our first tier here, Marty, is the elite. You have 4 in the elite. And let's start with maybe the elder statesman of this group, even though I think John Schneider would take some offense to that. But Howie Roseman, to me, feels like the best general manager in the NFL. I know we're doing tiers, but I would put him at the top of this tier. I mean, he basically built 2 separate Super Bowl championship teams in almost 2 different ways. He is a guy that has used the draft and the trade and free agency, all 3 of those things at a high level. If I get a call from Howie Roseman, I'm hanging up. Like, why would you trade with this guy? Every trade he makes seems to work out well. He's navigated the salary cap. He navigated quarterback change. He navigated coaching changes, and just a top-notch general manager, Marty. What makes him so special?
Yeah, and I think all these guys, Jeff, the first thing I look at is all these guys got longevity. And let me tell you, if you can stay in that job for a long time, you're doing something right. You really are. And all 4 of these guys, and if you look, and I think that's the only way you can get the elite, you have to win a Super Bowl, right? But when Howie is I'd smile, because I had a lot of conversations over the years with Howie, and I think that Howie's best trait, and he's got so many of them, but when I think of Howie, the word that pops into mind is value. I have never seen a guy that is so in tune with every other team's roster, salary cap, what they wanted to do. Look at the Jonathan Grenard trade this year. They didn't want to trade him, but they had to, because they were in a financial position, salary cap position. Howie knew that, and he was right there, and he kept offering and offering them value that eventually they couldn't refuse, and he gets a great player, a difference maker player. And I don't know how many teams would have were interested or would have known that and done that. And I just think that, I grew up in in the era of Bobby Beathard and Dick Steinberg, where general managers, the ones that I knew and respected a lot, would go out on the road on Tuesday, come back on Friday. They went and they scouted because they were building through the draft. I mean, a lot of it was really before free agency took place. The general manager's job has changed completely now, and you need somebody that is a decision maker, a communicator, an organizer, somebody who thinks ahead. And Howie Roseman, all these guys on this list do that. But Howie has done it to the point where, I mean, he was the Eagles general manager. Then when Chip Kelly came in, he was pushed aside. Then he came back and hit the ground running, and you can just see it starts with that the head coach. Hiring a head coach is your most important decision, and the quarterback is equally as important. And then it's how you want to build your team. And what a lot of these guys do, and how he does it as good as anybody, starts with the offense and defensive lines. They are always very good, and have an impact, and that's where it starts, and then it all goes from there. But the guys on this list, I mean, it's hard. You can't say one's better than the other when you've been in this job and had the success that these guys have had, and you've done it for so long. I think it's just, to me, having been in it so long and not having won the Super Bowl. I mean, it is so hard to win that game. When they win that game, I mean, it's just such an accomplishment. So all these guys are just have very special talents. They all go about it different ways, but Howie just amazes me because he has such a um strong information, opinion, and then just factual things to back it up on value of a player. I'll never forget one of my later years at the Panthers, and when Matt Rule was there, and David Tepper, and we were talking, and there was a player that they wanted to call and make an offer, and I knew it was too low. I knew it was way too low, and I called Howie and I made it. And he said, "What are you talking about, Marty? There's no way." I said, "Yeah, I know, Howie. They just wanted me to call." He said, "Well, you shouldn't have made the call," because he was so frustrated because he knew I knew the value. He knows the value, right? So he is a very shrewd negotiator, but the information that Howie Roseman has and uses in the right way, just makes him special in that position.
Well, let's get to the next GM here on this elite tier, and that's Brett Veach of the Kansas City Chiefs. And Brett took over for John Dorsey, who was originally in that position with Andy Reid, and since then they've just won Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. I think there was a little bit of a lull with the lack of success in draft picks, but that has picked way back up the last couple of years. But this team, is put together in the image of what Andy Reid wants. I mean, Andy Reid plays a big role in this, obviously, but he gets the players that Andy Reid needs for success, and he gets the players, honestly, on defense that Spagnuolo needs, Marty. Like, every year, they just find these guys that Spagnuolo can turn into the next all-pro corner.
Yeah, they have a formula and a plan, and that comes from that close relationship between Andy and Brett. I think that, the amount of conversations, I couldn't tell you how many times I talked to John or Ron a day. It was at least 4 or 5. I mean, you have constant conversations about things. So you know how each other look at situations and philosophies, and that tandem has just been, that's kind of what I'm talking about. When you have that relationship with the GM and the head coach, now you add one of the best quarterbacks to play the game, very good ownership. I mean, that's where it starts, and I think that communication between Brett and Andy is the key to a lot of their success.
Coming up next, we'll touch on more GM tiers, but first, Marty, the Chiefs to win the NFC, excuse me, the AFC West, they're plus 160. They're fair. I do feel like this is a big year for Kansas City, Marty, because it's maybe the last year of the Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris Jones trio, and they have a lot of young players, especially on defense, and maybe sort of wide receiver skill guy. They need to step up this year. They need the development to happen this season for them to win a Super Bowl. So this feels like a big year for Brett Veach and for Andy Reid to see that development from those players. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that definitely agree. And, to me, the Chiefs are sort of like the Commanders who you talked about. Both teams, if you just look at the team, I think they have a chance to win the division. The problem is divisions are so hard, both of them, with the Cowboys and the Eagles and the Giants and then obviously the West with Denver and the Chargers, who I think should make a run this year. So, yeah, I like their chances just in a hard division.
All right, two more NFL general manager in the elite tier. We'll get to those next. GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
All right, back on the GM Shuffle. Two more general manager in the elite tier. We'll speed up this a little bit to try to get as many as we can in here. John Schneider, I don't know if, Marty, he would have been in this tier before this past year, before the Super Bowl. He would have been, I think, hovering in this tier. But winning a Super Bowl 10 years after the first one and basically having a completely different team. Obviously, he built, obviously, from 10 years ago. But to reinvent himself, his draft picks for the last 5 years have been out of this world. Just in an elite job of drafting, and then also finding the right coach, right? Like Seattle chose him over Pete Carroll. That was the right decision. He backed him up by hiring a really good coach and finding Sam Darnold. So John Schneider, heck of a job in Seattle, definitely deserves to belong in this elite tier with 2 Super Bowls now with 2 completely different teams.
Yeah, I mean, he is, he's the best. To me, him and Howie, these 4 guys we're talking about in the elite, it's really hard to separate. John is just, you mentioned it, he hires the right head coaches. Okay, he's been there, he's done it for a long time. The biggest thing to me with John that defines John is his roots, and that's Green Bay. He was brought up with Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, that philosophy as far as building through the draft. Now, listen, he does a good job at free agency and those things, but he really does do a great job in the draft. He tends to move around on draft night, but he was taught by the best in that area in my mind. He was brought up in a great organization, and he's just a phenomenal general manager. And he has a great feel for all areas, just like Howie Roseman. And they are 2 totally different, separate personalities, but they know how to do this job, and they do it at a very elite level, along with these other 2 guys that you're going to mention, Geoff.
So there's one more left here. We've done Howie Roseman, John Schneider, Brett Veach. They've won 3 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, and 2 Super Bowles. And Les Snead's won 1 for the Rams. However, I think you can argue that the job he did this offseason is one of the best we've seen in a while of just targeting specific players to build to a championship roster. I think the Rams won the Super Bowl this season, and he'll have a second Super Bowl. But what about Les Snead makes him an elite general manager?
We talked about this, Geoff, and I think I think the combination of Les Snead and McVay, Sean McVay, is very effective, and it has to be. And you've got to know how good the communication in that organization is, even up all the way through Kevin Demoff, the president, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. They kind of go against the NFL tide in the way they build their team. They don't use a lot of draft choices. I think this year, Simpson was the second first rounder they used in 10 years. They do it a different way by trading picks and going after proven veterans, and they make it work salary cap wise. They make it work coaching wise. It's a different approach than really any other team and goes against the NFL grain, but they do an exceptional job at it. And I think that there has to be great communication in that building, and it starts with Les Snead. When I see there's great communication, I think the general manager gets the credit for that because he's the one who really has to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So Les Snead has done a great job. I think that is one of, if you're talking about the most powerful combos of general manager and the head coach, you're looking at uh, teams like Kansas City, like the Rams, and some others.
If you like what you're hearing here in the GM Show, was even more VSiN Pro, betting splits, power sharp announced, all was not on your first month. Go to vsin.com to subscribe. All right, Marty, I'm going to just list off here the next tier. It's the upper tier. So we have the elite tier, then we have the upper tier. There's 10 general managers here. Brandon Beane at Buffalo, Nick Cassero, Houston, Eric DeCosta, Baltimore, Brad Holmes, Detroit, Stephen Jones, Dallas, Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland in New Orleans, John Lynch in San Francisco, Jason Light, Tampa Bay, George Patton in Denver, and Elliot Wolf of New England. We just want to highlight a couple of these guys here, Marty. Who do you want to highlight first?
Well, I've got to go with my buddy Brandon Beane. I think that he is a Super Bowl away from jumping into the elite category. I think that ever since when he got in there, and this was a different scenario for him when he was hired, because Sean McDermott, the head coach, had been there for a year, and then Brandon came in, was hired as a general manager the year after. The first thing he did, and I know because I had a lot of conversations with him, he worked the whole first year of gathering draft picks, trading some players that were very good with the organization. But he built up draft picks. He had the forward thinking to say, listen, first thing we got to do is get a quarterback. So he built up draft picks for over a year going into the draft, used them to move up to 7 to get Josh Allen, and that was the start of it. Again, he's another one who believes their offensive line, in my opinion, might be one of the most underrated in the league. He believes you start building from the front back like most of these good GMs do, but offensive line, defensive line. But if the Bills were to win the Super Bowl, and I think they can make a real good run, he would this year he would jump up into the elite category.
This is a big year for him, right? Obviously, you fire
Yep.
McDermott,
Nope.
and they basically say, "Okay, well, Brandon, this is on you now, right? There's no one blaming no one else besides Brandon Beane. This is it. This is on him right now to make sure this team reaches its full potential, to make sure Josh Allen gets the promised land, to make sure that this window doesn't close for this team with Allen. It's a big year for Buffalo, and if they win, you're right. They put them in elite tier. If they don't, I think it just stays in this upper tier for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's longevity. This is a crucial year. Hiring your finding your quarterback and hiring your head coach. Hiring your head coach is the starter, because if you hire the wrong head coach, it just doesn't work. So we'll see. This is a huge year because Joe Brady has been there. They know each other very well, so they should have a very good relationship and philosophy of how they want to move forward personnel wise.
All right, another group I want to highlight here is the Cowboys. So Stephen Jones is, I mean, I guess technically he is the general manager here, but he's, I think, not really the person who should deserve the credit here. That's Will McClay, who's is in 24th season now as the Cowboys personnel department, and the guy who's really in charge, I think, here. They do a better job than they get credit for. And they also have an owner who's unstable. It's hard to, I think, work in that environment, but they've drafted very, very well over the years. And they have good football players each and every year with an owner who feels like he's sabotaging them all the time.
I think this year has been their most impressive offseason that I can remember. And I put Stephen Jones down because Will McClay is very critical to their process. I mean, he is the evaluator, he's the personnel guy, but Stephen Jones is the guy, I think, that keeps everything calm. I think he can keep his dad in check. And they did a lot more, they showed a lot more patience. Even though they were very active this year, they showed a lot more patience, restraint, and just really solid common sense decision making. And Stephen Jones, from what I understand, is very active in that. And you're right, Will is one of the top evaluators in the league, and he is very involved in the personnel decisions there. Again, it's normally more than one guy. It's normally how the communication works. But I do know, I think Stephen Jones has really, he's learned. He's been in it a long time. I think he's learned from some of the mistakes they've made. I do think he's brought some stability to it, and I really like what they've done this offseason.
I think you have to be excited about the Cowboys. We've talked a lot about them over this offseason now. Anyone else you want to highlight on this upper tier? You want to move to the very capable group? I do think that a guy like Jason Licht is a little bit underrated for what he's done in Tampa Bay. He's a guy, 2 Super Bowls or one Super Bowl, just one, right? With the Tom Brady year. But I feel like they've done a good job just rebuilding himself on the fly from Tom Brady to what this Baker Mayfield team is.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Another group, I'd like to mention, I had Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland, and there's a lot, it's pretty much like Stephen Jones, one with Clay.
Yeah.
Mickey Loomis has been around the league for a long time, and it's just such a good general manager, decision maker, keeps everybody communicator, keeps everybody in check. And then Jeff Ireland is the personnel guy, the guy that goes out on the road. They have been together so long. They are on the same page, and they do a great job. And, of course, John Lynch, the 49ers, you mentioned Jason. Elliott Wolf and George Patton are both great evaluators and do a great job working with their respective head coaches and being in charge. So I think that, that's a really good list there.
All right, coming up next, we'll get to a couple more tiers of NFL general managers. But first, Marty, you cannot wager on general manager of the year. I don't think it's an actual award. It's not on draft, but you can wager on coach of the year. And right now, John Harbaugh is the favorite. Then Jesse Minter of the Ravens and Robert Saleh, Kellen Moore, Joe Brady, Todd Monken. Now, this award is not best coach. Okay, Andy Reid has never won this award.
Right.
I think Mike Tomlin won this award once. It's not best coach. It's essentially which team came out of nowhere and was really good. Okay, that
Right.
tends to be this award. Can I offer you Brian Schottenheimer at 18-1 to be coach of the year for the Dallas Cowboys?
Run up the card.
Yeah.
Run it up.
Yeah.
Run it up. Him and Kellen Moore. Run them both up.
Can I give you one other long shot? Can I give you Kevin O'Connell 22-1 gets the Vikings to win the NFC North?
Run it up.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right? The Vikings are one of the most intriguing stories of the season to look at how Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray are gonna mesh and get along. Yeah, I definitely think that's worth. What do you say, 22-1? Run it up.
For Kevin O'Connell, yeah. I just think that is maybe I'm too high on some teams. I always do worry entering the season that I'm too high. Like I have the Cowboys, like the Vikings. Like it seems like could Zach Taylor 25-1? Bengals do a good job this year and get to the playoffs. That feels live to me as well for Taylor here. All right, Marty, we have a couple more tiers to get to. We'll talk about the very capable general managers next year. GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
All right, back on the GM Shuffle. Please go to YouTube and subscribe. We're almost at 400 subscribers now. Hope to be at 4 million before the start of the season, Marty, but it feels unlikely to happen. But we're growing every day, so we really appreciate it. Please go subscribe. It takes nothing to do that. It's free. We're not charging anything, but it really helps our podcast out. So please go do that. Or also our old episodes are all there. So if you want to hear anything we've said, whether we've ranked quarterbacks and coaches, whether we've ranked best rosters, worst roster, all those things are covered in those previous episodes. So go check those out. Back to our general manager list here. So we did elite, upper tier, now very capable. Marty has 9 and very capable. Chris Ballard for the Colts, Andrew Berry of the Browns, Brian Gutekunst of the Packers, Joe Horetz of the Chargers, Dan Morgan, the Panthers, Adam Peters, Washington, Ryan Poles, Chicago, Joe Shea, New York, and Duke Tobin of the Bengals. Marty, every one of these general managers can move up into the upper tier, right? Which ones are most likely the next year or two to move, in your opinion, up to the upper tier of general manager of the National Football League?
Well, I really, Adam Peters would probably be my first name just because in his first year as general manager, they got to the NFC Championship game up in Philadelphia. And then last year, Jaden Daniels had all kinds of injuries, and their defense was really just bluntly not fast enough and needed to get younger. They've done that. They've done that. They've gotten weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I think that he has one of the better offensive lines in the league. I think they might be one of the most underrated offensive lines in the league. And I think that they have a chance. It's a very tough division this year in the NFC. But they have a shot. So if they come and win a division, I mean, if they make a run in the playoffs, that would be 2 of his first 3 years. He would skyrocket up. And the only reason that a lot of these guys are in these categories, these below the first 2 are just because of you want to see it more. It's longevity. This is a job that really is defined by your longevity and how long that you can do it. Because there are changes made if you're not winning, and it doesn't have to be all your fault, but it is. You're in charge of that. So, but yeah, I like Adam. I like what Dan Morgan has done a lot at the Panthers. You know, they took the offense lineman I thought was the best left tackle in the draft. I think that number one, he hired the right head coach. And again, this is important because what Dan Morgan did is he hired Dave Canales. Well, he knew Dave from his days in Seattle. So they knew each other, and they knew that they were on the same page as far as how to build a roster and how to build a team. So I really like what they've done. But I like all the guys on this list.
So the two guys that come to mind that could elevate quite quickly, you mentioned one of them, which was Dan Morgan. The Panthers have done a really, it feels like, quiet job of building up this roster over the years. They drafted the offensive rookie of the year last season, right? They built up the offensive line into a much better shape now. They built the defense over the last 2 years, Marty, into a much better shape. And he doesn't get credit for Bryce Young. He didn't draft him, but he does get credit for Dave Canales helping Bryce Young become better, right? Because that's who he ended up bringing in as the coach. So and that's one of this is, some of these guys on this list, weren't there when they drafted some of these players. So, it is hard to figure out, I think, sometimes. Now Morgan was the assistant general manager though. So does he get credit for drafting Bryce Young if he's on the team when it happens or not? Do we gain that?
Oh yeah. I mean, he definitely had a voice in it. There's no question he had a voice in it. So I think you have to give him credit, and we just talking about the 2 guys on this list, Geoff. And again, this is the way sometimes you look at general managers as well. But when we talked about Brandon Beane in the last segment, Dan and Joe Schoen were both with Brandon at the Bills. Now, Dan came from the Seahawks to the Bills, so he's with John as well. But I think that and some people might roll their eyes at Joe Schoen, but I think he's done a great job at offensive line. He's done a above average job with. I think the defensive line is exceptional. He's got talent there. He got the quarterback in the bottom of the first round. So I think he has made a lot of good moves. And it seems like him and John Harbaugh are getting along and on the same page. And Joe's had to probably make some adjustments, but that's what you do in this job. You make adjustments. The only concern you have is to make the organization and the team the best that it can be. So that's why he was on the list. And again, that goes to John Schneider and Brandon Beane. Whenever you have guys that go out and get general manager jobs with other teams, I think it's a reflection on how good a job you have done where they came from.
So my GM, I like Dan Morgan to move up. I think the guy that's the closest moving up in this group is Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager. And he certainly made some mistakes, I think, early on in his tenure there, but he's corrected those mistakes in a big way. Just think about what he's done the last couple of years. He drafted Darnell Wright, right tackle, who's going to be He was good. Then he went and got basically a whole new offensive line in the draft, in free agency, right? And some trades. He maneuvered to eventually get Caleb Williams to be his number one pick. Okay. He hired Ben Johnson, right? Super important. Hiring the right coach. Look at the upgrade the defense has made this offseason and building up around some of the core pieces that he drafted over the last couple of years. Also, I forgot to mention Colston Loveland, who he drafted ahead of Tyler Warren, and Colston Loveland fits what the Bears want to do better than Tyler Warren does. So he again matched up a player with the right scheme for him. So I think Ryan Poles is very close to moving up, Marty.
Very much so, and if they win the division, he automatically goes. I mean, how about the boatload of picks he got from the Panthers, that they used to get choose Bryce Young, but he was in a position, he was getting a lot of heat as far as needing a quarterback because Justin Fields wasn't really turning out the way that they thought, and basically I thought he would. That took, even though he got a bunch of draft picks plus DJ Moore. So he got a lot of picks and a lot of ammo to build the foundation, and I think he's done an amazing job there. And it's just, again, he just need a little bit more time on the job. But if they do very well this year, I agree with you, Geoff. He will definitely soar up.
Up and coming, you had Jon-Eric Sullivan of the Dolphins and James Gladstone of Jacksonville. It does feel like Gladstone is under the microscope because his drafts just do not follow consensus, which is nothing wrong with that. But we have enough data now that tells you that consensus is not terrible, Marty. And he just has drafted so far away from that. He traded, another first round pick for Travis Hunter, and they haven't figured out how to use him correctly. Now, obviously, him being healthy, and I think they'll find a way to use him properly this year, and he'll be a great football player. But it feels like Gladstone, a lot of limelight on him this season as a general manager.
There is, and again, this is one of those combo deals to me, between Gladstone and the head coach, Liam Cohen. I think that they have come in and really changed the culture there. And I just, up and coming, wait and see, however you want to phrase it. I'm going to be very interested to see if the Jaguars can follow up on last year and if they can continue to improve. But my favorite guy on that list. I mean, I've talked about him, but I love what Jon-Eric Sullivan's doing in Miami. I think that he does have that combination of a head coach that he knows has had a relationship with, and I think they are doing a tremendous job. So I think that he could definitely, but it's his first year, and we'll see. But he is definitely in the up and coming list to me.
Then there's 7 wait and sees. These are mostly, first year guys or into their second year that haven't really had to, prove themselves, quite yet on a big scale. But I'm curious about Atlanta. Like we've talked a lot about Atlanta. How much is Matt Ryan doing there versus Ian Cunningham?
Well, I know when they made the announcement on Matt that the owner basically said that he was in charge overseeing all decisions in the football operations department. And that, I think, is why the league decided that the Bears would not get the 2 third-round picks when Ian Cunningham went and filled the general manager's job, because it was out there that Matt Ryan had the final say. With that said, Matt has come out and said, listen, that I don't know this part of the job. I'm just here to watch and learn and help him. But he will have a big voice, as will Ian Cunningham. So that'll be interesting to watch, Geoff, because I thought the Falcons have done a good job in the draft. I mean, they've had high first round picks, granted, but man, look at the skill players they've gotten. So they're still, it still depends on if they can find that quarterback. If Michael Penix is this guy or whoever it would be, they need that quarterback for the future. But I thought they had done a very good job drafting coming up to this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how Matt Ryan and Ian Cunningham do.
I have very much enjoyed what John Spytek has done in Vegas. I think that in year 1, he has done the best job he could to rebuild this team. I wish, obviously, the Crosby trade would have gone through. That would have been even better. for the Raiders, but I love that he went and said, look, man, we're not winning with this guy right now. Let's get rid of him. Let's get a first round pick. But I think Spytek, I think he's one of those names that's going to move up fast if the Raiders win quickly.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? Head coach? Gotta love it, right? Gotta love the hire. Head coach and the quarterback, obviously top pick overall, but really like him. So I think he's off to.
But everyone else, I think they did a good job in free agency and the draft. They used the money they had. Like, they had money, might as well use it to make your team better. It just feels like a very targeted way to build a team. They weren't just out here spending money to spend money. They targeted certain players for certain positions. And they've done what they've had to do to make this work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like everything they've done. They're going in the right direction.
All right, Marty, we did it again. We fooled them. We did a podcast episode. Please rate, review, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys showing us love, commenting on YouTube, commenting on social media. We're back next week talking more ball. Take care, everyone. Talk to you guys next week.